What's up, world? It's your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to the conversation, the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be with my next guest. I have been a fan of his acting for a very long time. Every time he appears on the screen, he has a way of commanding the role and what you see on screen, but not in this way that is so overpowering that he steals the scene away from his other colleagues, but he has a way of just centering his character right in the moment with his raw emotions. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of physical acting, and it's his slight gestures that this guest has that I think makes him such a standout in a sea of incredible thespians. And when I watched this new movie, he held his face for the entire time, and I thought it was a challenging role. It's a challenging subject, and it was a challenging character to play, and I cannot wait to unpack it with him. The movie I am talking about is called Reawakening, and the guest is no other than the incredible fan favorite, BAFTA award-winning Jared Harris. What's happening, sir?
Thank you so much for having me. Bless you.
Good. I just want to say kudos to your work, man.
Thank you, man.
You have a way of just tapping into emotions. How do you think about that when you approach a role?
Well,
how to tap into emotions?
You do a lot of thinking about it, and then just hopefully let it all go and hope that it's going to be there. I mean, it's always nerve-wracking before you've got a big scene. The night before, you can't sleep because you don't know if it's going to be there when you need it to be there, you know. So, but after a while, you just trust that it will, and you know, there's tricks that you can do to pull yourself into it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you just sort of hope that you can just forget that it's not real and that it's actually happening to you, and you know, somehow something will connect with you. Yeah. So I mean, often the best way to do things like that is to try and deliberately to push it off, because that's human nature. We try not to feel extreme emotions. We protect ourselves when we're hurt, you know. So we don't launch ourselves into things that make us feel vulnerable. We normally try and protect ourselves. So you try and stop yourself from crying. Do you know what I mean? That's what you do. You don't go, oh, I'm feeling tears now. Boom, I'm going to let it all. You actually try and control your emotions. So the act of trying to control your emotions will often just trigger it.
I never thought about it like that. We do try and control our emotions. And I love what you're saying about crying. That's a perfect example to use, because when we cry, we tend to not want to cry.
Well, it's not, crying is a sort of extreme example of it. But
I think that's a great example.
Feeling vulnerable.
Yeah.
We naturally protect ourselves from those situations, you know?
I'm just curious then, with that, how has the exercise of vulnerability impacted you in real life?
I mean, you know,
do you let your tears flow, or do you?
No, I mean, you just
use as you're
not. It's not going to change your. I mean, it's physiological. Do you know what I mean? It's those are hardwired into us in the way that we protect ourselves, and I haven't noticed that I've unwired that for myself in real life. You know, you have to make a speech for someone at a funeral or something, and you have the same reaction. You know, you're trying to keep it together, and then you hear someone say something, or something happens, and that'll just trigger you, you know, and the dam will break or something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
The reason I'm smiling about this is because this is a big part of my therapy session that I have personally. Okay. My therapist, we always talk about how I suppress emotions, because in my role as a journalist, and you're really reporting on like heavy content, sensitive subject matters and storylines, you never want to become the story itself. And so what you do is you suppress things. And I have to watch images that are horrific images, and it's to the point where I almost like have to normalize it, because I'm looking for specific things that would tell me a data point that I can convey to the audience of why this is so important. And then when I'll find myself, Jared, is I'll be on the couch in the middle of the afternoon watching a cereal commercial, and I just start bawling uncontrollably, right? And my therapist is saying because I have so much suppressed emotions,
that makes sense.
It's a way of coming out.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And of course, you're looking for those things that you might be able to use to trigger yourself when you're doing big scenes like that. But I have in life chosen, which you don't have the option to do, not to look at stuff for that very reason, that I know that once it's in your head, you can't get it out.
Okay.
So, that's kudos to you.
Yeah. This role that you play in the film Reawakening, audience, it is. I try not to read like any synopsis ahead of time, and I didn't for this movie, and I don't watch any reviews. I typically try not, in particular if I know I'm going to interview the guest, not to watch any previous interviews, so I can go into the movie raw, and then I can go into my guest raw as well. And it was nothing that I expected it to be, because there is idea audience, and Jared can surmise it much better than I can, but it's idea the child goes missing, a child returns that isn't the child of the
may
parents.
Or may not be.
It may or may not be, and they have to go through this journey, right? And so immediately in the beginning, I'm just like, just take the DNA test.
Well, that comes up in the story.
But it comes up in the story in a way that I think really goes to how we started off this conversation about vulnerability and emotions and the human psyche, right?
Yeah. Well, Mary's happy with the truth that's in front of her right there, and she doesn't need any more information. And John has spent 10 years looking for his daughter, and that's the way that he's chosen to not deal with the idea that she may have gone forever. As long as he's looking for her, he's keeping alive the idea that she's still alive. Mm-hmm. Whereas Mary has chosen quietly within herself to resolve the idea of whether or not her daughter will ever come back, or if she's alive or not, and has moved on. Mm-hmm. But they've never discussed that between them. But when the woman comes back and claims to be their daughter, Mary, the reason why the girl agrees to the DNA test, but Mary doesn't want it. And so the choice of forcing the girl to go through the DNA test becomes another strain on their marriage, because if he's going to do that, it means that the one person in the world that he trusts more than anyone else is his wife. They've kept together for all this time. He's risking exploding that relationship, So it's dealt with in the story, because that's the obvious answer to it. Just take the DNA test.
But the act of not taking the test reveals so much about human connectivity and connection to memories and the ideas.
And by that time you're getting answers to the various questions that are coming up. Yeah. And again, she's a very clever writer, Virginia, because she puts you in the shoes of the different characters, the different perspective of the three characters. And, at a certain point, as an audience member, it's that Hitchcock thing, You want to know the answer. Yeah. Is it her or isn't it her? If it is her, why isn't she telling them what they want to know? If it isn't her, how does she know so much about the real girl? Yeah. So there's an ongoing mystery that's at the heart of the story, if you like. But eventually, the movies are sort of an examination of the difference in the male and female psyche.
Yeah. What I loved in the opening scene, there's a couple of scenes I want to highlight. And one is the opening scene where you and your wife are sitting
watching
TV. And it's just so normal. An audience, their daughter has been missing for over 10 years. And so it's one of those moments where this film lets us inside the home of a family who has a child that is still missing, right? That hasn't been declared dead or alive. And in the back of my mind, it made me recognize that, I guess I've always have wondered, how do families move along? And it was this sense of normalcy, whether it was pretend or not. Talk to me about how you guys thought about that scene of trying to create normalcy.
So, the daughter's been missing for 10 years, and in that time, the mother and the father, the couple, have never discussed how, at a certain point, they stopped discussing if she's alive, how they both feel about moving forward, if you like. He is pursuing his goal of looking for her, putting up notices and going to runaway shelters. And the mother has sort of processed her feelings and is working with children during the day in the kindergarten, They never talk about it, but the only way they acknowledge that there is this unresolved question between them is by watching television shows about missing persons, you know, and that's the only moment at which the elephant rears its head up in their relationship, but they don't discuss it. And you know, she's not suspicious about where he's going at night. You know, she doesn't think that he's having an affair or something like that. She knows that he's going off to homeless shelters. He's putting out new pictures. He's trying to see whether or not anyone has seen his daughter. Still 10 years later, you know. So, but she doesn't challenge him about it. She doesn't question him. She knows this is the way that he's decided that he wants to handle something that he's not prepared to confront, which is the idea that his daughter's never coming back.
Yeah.
That's something he doesn't want to deal with.
And I thought that you did such a great job in the physical acting of holding that space, right? Like as an audience looking in, what I was viewing was like of a father who still had some glimmer of hope that his child was out there.
Yeah.
And so when you were doing your excursions in the evening time, I really felt by your acting, your performance, as if there's almost a sense of resolve that it could be over, but there was also too this glimmer of hope that there is a chance if I just talk to this one more person.
Yeah, I think that he, you know, obviously the hope is harder and harder to keep alive with each passing year, but it's in a way, he's living in denial, and it's the way that he's being able to maintain to function in life. But in some way, his life has stopped, you know, and her life is actually still has moved on to a new chapter, if you like.
Which is so difficult to do. Shout out to the directors and for the writers to be able to do that, right? You have almost 2 or 3 different trajectories going at the same time and moving in different directions, but it's still so linear and concise as if it's moving forward together.
Yeah.
Which is really hard to do with like a drama piece, right? There's ways you can do that in animation and superhero movies, but not with this. This is just raw human emotion.
Well, and again, it's a testament to how clever she is a writer, because actually the character whose story, if you like, is treading water, has stopped, is the one who on the surface superficially seems that it still has momentum. He's still going out there and looking, you know, but actually he has not moved on.
There's a moment, I was just discussing this recently, the word of the year, I believe for Webster's Dictionary or one of those sites, is called parasocial. And parasocial is this idea of having connections with something that isn't real or with someone you haven't met.
Oh, wow.
And there was a moment I felt this parasocial connection to you and your character.
Oh, bless you.
Is when the scene arises when your maybe or maybe not daughter arrives back at your home, and the emotions that you went through, it took me on that journey with you, but then it made me ask myself, how would I have responded in that moment? Can you talk to us about how you approach having such a wide range of emotions? Because I felt within that 2 minutes of that scene, you took us through an emotional journey. Sure. It wasn't a flat note.
No, I mean, you know, that just happened, and the scene wasn't written exactly that way, and it was more, he meets her in the hallway and she says she's come home, and he questions it, and then he agrees to go inside, and then I thought, and it felt a little bit flat, you know what I mean? So I just thought I'd throw a curveball in and have a panic attack and make Juliet have to help me pull myself together to go in and meet her.
So that wasn't planned.
No, we just did it on one of the takes, and it just, you know, suddenly happened. And then Juliet's amazing; she's an incredible actress.
Amazing in this,
and so she knew exactly. Once I started going down that way, she knew exactly what was happening and what she needed to do. So she started improvising. You know, breathe, pull yourself together. None of that stuff was in it, and you know, collapsing on the step and everything, and you know. That all just sort of happened.
Audience, I'm blown away, because for me, that was one of the most standout scenes of the film, of an incredible standout moment. But it threw me into your feelings, and I went on that journey with you. an audience, it made me ask that question that we oftentimes ask about different scenarios. What would you have done? What would you do? And then how would you have reacted? Would you have reacted gleefully if your child comes home after being missing for over 10 years? Would you have been skeptical over 10 years? And to this moment, as I'm speaking with you, I still haven't resolved on how I would have reacted, but I think I would have at least started to hyperventilate.
I wanted him to believe that his daughter was on the other side of the door. And that
you felt that.
Because then that's where the story pivots to something completely different. He looks at her, she looks at him. There isn't that instant flash of recognition that occurs between them. She doesn't look at him and go, Daddy. He's waiting for something from her that's not coming. He doesn't understand why it isn't coming. He's looking at his wife. Why is it that she's seeing something that I'm not seeing? Is there something wrong with me? And then as you obviously understand the story in reflection, you understand that Erin's character has had such a terrible history with men that she's going to see this man, and her whole experience of the last 10 years is going to be projected onto this person. So there isn't going to be that flash of recognition. You know what I mean? There's going to be this sort of suspicion and a withdrawing and a protectiveness about her. And and the idea was that he has fantasized about this moment of finding her. He's going to find her. He's going to rescue her. He's going to be a hero, and it doesn't happen in the moment, So, there's a lot of reality comes crashing down and smacks him in the face.
And just as you were talking about the push and pull, something that comes to mind too as well is that what we do as humans, besides vulnerability, is oftentimes, if you are somewhat of a decent human being, there is wanting to protect others. And I felt like throughout the entire movie, there's this push-pull of you wanting to protect your wife's sense of reality that she's created in her head, while at the same time acknowledging the truth of what is. And I felt that there's push-pull. And I think as society, not outside of this film, I think some of us are always wrestling with that dynamic of, I'm already here in this journey, but I'm going to allow you, give you grace to get up to the point that I'm at.
Yeah, and of course, then she's just going off in a completely different direction, and he's trying to basically pull her to acknowledge his reality, if you like, and what he's seeing, because he thinks he's going crazy. There's something wrong with me, that I can't see this. And then, at a certain point, his wife makes his choice, and so he's completely abandoned, and he's on his own, still trying to wrestle with what he believes to be true.
Yeah.
And then, the answer is that maybe if this isn't her, she knows where she is because she must have met her because she knows too much.
Yeah.
So he's still sort of obsessed with the idea of wanting to know the truth, wanting to know the details, wanting the facts, which is, I think, is quite a male thing.
It is. Wanting resolve. But also, too, it puts that whole dynamic of a whodunit into a different reframe.
Yeah.
Right. Not in a typical investigative murder or a typical investigation of a kidnapping. Right. It's just a completely different reframe. And in particular, in typical male fashion, sometimes it reveals in a physical way. Another powerful scene I want you to unpack with our audience today is the scene in the diner.
The cafe.
The cafe. Right. Where everything just comes to a head.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that rage.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that was the first time we've seen that. We knew you were feeling conflicted and torn, and you can tell this emotional toll that it was having on you, but I wasn't expecting rage.
Yeah, well, I mean, at that point he knows what he needs to know, and the person who's got the answers is that person on the other side of the counter, and they're not giving. I mean, I've called her out, and she isn't giving me the answers. And I know she knows something that's going to help me get to where I need to get to. And at that point, it's quite cruel what's happening to him. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give stuff away. But from that point of the story, from a sort of a emotional comfort point of view, you really understand where the wife has arrived at where she is. but from the point of view of needing to understand what's happened, you understand where he's coming from and what it is that he's not going to be able to rest until he's found an answer to this question.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, it resolves in a slightly different way.
Mm-hmm.
But that scene is also that scene's the conversation between John and Mary that they've never had in 10 years, and they finally have their conversation.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes you are forced to eventually.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to confront the elephant in the room.
And
that
scene ended on a much bigger note when we were shooting it. I mean, he completely collapses on the floor.
Yeah.
And it, you know, I remember at one point we would do take after take, and I turned to Virginia and went, "Please, man, you must have it by now.
Please,
I'm like a sponge. I've got nothing left.
There's nothing in
we
me."
did like take 7 or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Take 7 of rage.
No, it wasn't the rage. It was the collapsing on the floor. Yeah.
Audience, just to take us out of the film, to give you perspective on what we're talking about until you actually see this film, it puts me into conversation. And Jared, I don't know if you saw this piece, but there's this piece, a clip that was going around the internet probably within the last year or two. And it's always stood out to me, and I think it's very relevant for this conversation we're having right now. But it's between an interview or a conversation between Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin that they're having. And she says to him, they weren't in a relationship, but it's the idea of a couple being in a relationship, in particular relationship to Black love. And she says, you know, I want you to lie to me. And she says, when you're out in the world as a Black man, you are being performative, right? Making others feel comfortable around you, making other people feel secure around you, entertaining them, if you will, with your speak. And she said, but when you come home to me, I get your true self. Right. I get the anger. I get the rage you feel from being a Black man in the world by having to be performative. Okay. So I don't get your happy. Right. I don't get your joy, right? And she says, I want you to come home and lie to me and perform before me. And that has always stood out to me. And I've always asked my question of, do I want to be lied to or do I want to be told? And do I want to be lied to for my own sake of comfort, right? Or do I want the truth to know exactly where I stand? And I really feel like that is a position between you and Mary, your wife, in this whole movie is, and it goes back and forth, like who's lying to who, right? And whose objective is it for whose comfort is the lie for?
Well, whose version of the truth, or whose version of which version of the truth that leads you towards happiness is the one that you're going to follow, you know? Yeah. I mean, it ends up being hers. Yeah. And his answer, his version of the truth is something that he has to literally, you know, bury. Mm-hmm. But you know, in answer to that question, I think it all depends on what sort of the day the other person's had. Yeah. I mean, if they've had a bad day, the last thing you in the world you want is to someone to come down and go, you can't believe the kind of day I've had. You go, I've had an insane day as well. Like, can we just put a pin in this?
Put a pin in it, yeah.
Yeah, or, you know, if you can absorb all of that frustration, you know, and you take it on board yourself without it feeling like it's going to completely derail you. Yeah.
I just think that, audience, I'm not going to say how this ends, but there's a scene, and I'll wink at Jared, when you look into the window from the outside. Oh, yeah. And it's a moment of resolve, right? And
he has a decision to make.
Yeah, it seems like you decided which direction you're going to take in the fight, and the way you stared.
Decided not to share the truth with them.
Yeah, it was very powerful.
That's something that he's going to keep for himself because this is his new reality now, and they're happy. Yeah, and he's not going to tell them what he's. I mean, I don't think Mary wants to know.
I don't think she does neither.
No,
I don't think she does neither. Yeah, and it's almost, again, the lying, right? Will the truth hurt more than the lie? Right, and I think sometimes that's what we always.
Well, then that's that's the sort of the male-female thing in the story, was that he's obsessed with finding the truth, and in the end, the truth leads him towards a truth that is just horrific. It's something which then he's got to keep to himself because he can't. It's not fair to the others, you know.
And also, too, sometimes is it better. And even sometimes a person knows that they are in their own alternative reality, in their delusional state, and they don't want to be called out for it, right? It's almost comfortable walking around pretending. And
well, it's not delusional. His reality at that point is not delusional. It's
not
just,
Mary's, yeah.
Well, but she's happy. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's happy.
It's her happiness.
It's her happy, and that we'll play along. And to be fair to the Erin's character, Claire, she's told him what he needs to know.
She has.
You know.
Audience, what's also too, I can talk to Jared all day, but what's also too interesting about this is that after watching it, I discovered that there are real cases out there.
Oh, yeah.
Where there are individuals who show up as imposters of missing children.
That happens as well, yeah. That happens as well. I mean, you know, quite often you find that the real children come back for whatever reason, that they ran away from home, they ended up on the streets, they've had a brutal life, and they come back home, and they find it very difficult to adjust to that life. And even though the parents are surrounding them with love, it's difficult for them to readjust to that because of the reality they've lived. And then other times, there's a very famous documentary about this. There's a French family, I think, where the child comes back and it's clearly an imposter, but they've chosen to accept the child as being theirs because they need it to be that person so badly. But everyone from the outside looks at it and goes, you know, they've shrunk. It's not possible it's the same person. It can't be the same person. The eye color is totally different, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing. Jared Harris, thank you so much for this gift of film that you and your colleagues have put together. And thank you so much for your incredible gift of acting.
Thank you.
And you are always such a treasure to watch on the screen.
Thank you.
How can individuals watch and find The Reawakening?
It's available on Amazon and Apple TV. I think Apple Plus or whatever it is they're calling themselves now.
Yeah, whatever they call themselves.
They keep rebranding themselves. Make up your mind.
Again, delusion. Jared Harris, thank you so much for being here. Audience, until next time, peace.